there. We've lived there for a couple of years now, and I've been an ER nurse for about 7 years. I was an EMT prior to that, so I've worked in the emergency room for about 14 years now. And the way I got here today, I've actually been trying to find an opportunity to go to Gaza for quite some time now. And back in August, I have a friend who's a physician, and he told me about an organization that was going, and they do yearly trips to Palestine and the West Bank and Gaza both to do orthopedic surgeries. And I had given him my credentials and told him, I would like to be a part of the next mission, inshallah. And then, as you know, the escalation and violence happened in October, and I emailed them again in November, and I said, I think that I could be of service in some way as an ER nurse. We were all watching all these videos come out of Instagram of patients on the floor and, their loved ones holding IV drips above them, and I just thought, okay, maybe I can help in this very chaotic situation with the, little knowledge and training that I have. And I just kept emailing them and persisting about it, and alhamdulillah, that came to fruition in about March or April. It's a little complicated process to go. You have to be cleared by multiple entities, including the World Health Organization and United Nations and several other entities. So it takes a couple months to get that processed. And alhamdulillah, in April, I got the word that I was cleared to go, and I was put on the list to go with the organization that I went with. And alhamdulillah, we left on April 29th, and we went to Cairo, and that's kind of where our journey started.
I remember when I received the news, and this doesn't compare to your situation, and those that had the same experience as you, being chosen by Allah to go there. I remember when I received a text message in February to go to Turkey after the earthquake, and I stopped on the road and I said, wow, this is a huge opportunity. In the plane, it was mixed emotions. It was like, what am I going to see? Is there going to be any type of danger? What's going to happen? If you could just tell us some of your emotions, what was going through your mind in the plane on the way there?
Sure. So I do think it's such an honor and a privilege and an invitation. And I just want to kind of note for the younger audience here that never doubt that Allah sees your intention and that Allah sees and hears your dua, because going to Gaza was a persistent dua that I made, and specifically my husband and I had the honor of going to Umrah in November, and that was one of the duas I made in Umrah in front of the Kaaba was, Allah, I don't know how, but just get me to Gaza somehow. I just was kind of obsessed with this idea. And so a lot of my feelings in preparation, because it was a long preparation mentally, physically, emotionally, to go, part of the thought process I was having was how Allah knows our deepest desires and how He knows our intention. And if you put that intention forward of wanting to help and do good, fi sabilillah, for His pleasure, for His sake, that never goes unnoticed. And sometimes it's delayed and it may not come in the way that you want or when you want, but it always comes in the absolute best of ways. And this is a clear example of that. And that has nothing to do with our merit as people or anything we've done on our own. It all has to do with the mercy and the love of Allah. And He's capable of all things. So that's the first takeaway. The second thing was imposter syndrome, right? Because I was going with this group of phenomenal doctors, Ivy League, have gone on dozens of medical missions. I have never done a medical mission, let alone international. So my friends and I joke about, we went from 0 to 100. We went from, I've done local disaster relief work, but nothing that compares. I've always worked in high resource setting emergency rooms and hospitals, and no amount of training can prepare you for a war zone, and then the type of war zone that is Gaza, which is different from any other war zone, as we know, because we're seeing the crimes unfold, right? So part of that feeling was this imposter syndrome, will I be able to help? What will I be able to do? There was one point on the plane I was texting my husband, like, do I even know anything? I don't remember anything I know. And just, it feels like an overwhelming task. And I'm so glad you brought up Musa al-Islam, because as we were going from Cairo to Gaza by road, you have to cross through the Sinai desert. And we were listening to one of my favorite surahs, Surah Taha.
Allah.
And I couldn't just help but visualize, like, this is the land of Musa al-Islam.
SubhanAllah.
And this is kind of a tangent, I'm sorry, but I love Surah Taha so much because Allah gives him a task, and Musa al-Islam complains to Allah, and he says, but I stutter, but I'm not worthy, but I can't, but I'm scared, but I need my brother, you know? And he shows his humanity in that, and I empathized with that so much in that moment of, after getting off the plane and just that 12-hour journey, which is only supposed to take 3 hours, by the way, crossing through the Sinai desert, you have a lot of time to think. And that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about, this is an enormous task. Am I going to be able to, you know, do anything at all? And I was just really comforted by that. And I thought, you know, if Allah has brought you so far, if He's given you a task, then He's going to see it to fruition as well. So it was complex emotions. Of course, you know, we fear for our families that we've left behind. And we had to make a lot of preparations before going, as far as, you know, making sure there's a will in place, making sure, you know, if something happens while there, to make sure our family's provided for. So there's a lot that goes into it. But, you know, once you finally step foot into Gaza, then it's just relief. And Allah puts like this sakina in your heart, and you're like, oh, I made it. I finally made it, you know.
Wow. So she mentioned a number of things. I want to mention, I'm just going to get to when you arrived and what you saw. But before that, you do notice she said they had to get their will in place. Will. Who knows what a will is here? Does everyone know what a will is? Who does not know what a will is from the adults? Okay. So a will is something that is made just in case Allah decides to take you from this earth. Meaning that her journey there, are you ready for this part? She was ready to possibly die. I don't think y'all realize that, right? Like, people that are going to Gaza to help, they may die in the process. Okay? So she was going there willingly to die in the process of serving those in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's huge. And you see someone here that was willing to take that sacrifice. You have to thank her, and also thank her husband as well. Right? That's huge.
Raise your hand, husband.
Yes, I didn't know if you wanted to. There you go. My man. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Like, that's huge. That is a huge, dare I say, accomplishment. You know, to have that wherewithal and that trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I just wanted to mention that for those that you see that have went to Gaza, that they didn't know, you know, when they're there, it doesn't matter. It could happen. The bombs are not, they're indiscriminate. They don't care who you are, where you're from, doesn't matter, right? Now, when you arrived, if we could put the pictures up, inshallah, Tori, can we be ready? Yeah, oh, yeah.
It wasn't casting for some reason.
Inshallah.
Some tech support.
Yeah. Okay.
Can someone
We need the password. So when you arrived in Gaza, okay, or you drove, so you said you arrived in Egypt, you were driving through the Sinai border. Were there a lot of checkpoints?
Yes.
How strenuous were they?
Sure. So the journey is supposed to take, like I said, about 3 hours. It's like Dallas to Houston type of a drive. But the Sinai Desert is just that. It's a desert, and it's a militarized zone. So we have to stop for, I think, 6 or 7 checkpoints. They hold your passport, they go through your luggage. Each of us, I was with the team of 17 of us, and each of us had 10 to 12 bags on average of medical supplies with us. So imagine they go through all of that, and it's a process, it's a strenuous process to get through. And then once you get to the Rafah border, on the Egyptian side, there's customs, they go through all your bags again, there's a long wait, we spent 5 or 6 hours there. So we had left at around 4 a.m. from Cairo and the UN office, and we didn't get there until, I believe, Maghrib. So that was it was over 12-hour journey that we made.
So when you arrived, where did they put you in some tents, or how many of you were there?
Sure. So there was 17 of us total, and as we crossed into Palestine, into Gaza, and like I mentioned, there was this like sense of relief that we had finally made it. And as we're waiting for our bags to come off the belt, we hear this big bomb go off, like not even a kilometer away. And we actually felt the blast radius from that bomb to the point where we were kind of pushed back by it. And at first, growing up in America, I grew up in Queens, I've never heard a bomb before. So, we were kind of taken aback by it. And the Gazans have this word that they say, it's teglagish. And it literally translates to no worries. It's like Hakuna Matata, like don't worry about it. And that was like a constant phrase that they said. So they looked at us, they laughed, they said it's okay, and they joked, they said, these are the fireworks that we arranged for your foreign delegation to welcome you into Gaza. And I mean, just like, that gives you a glimpse into the character of the Palestinians, by the way. Like, in that type of situation where a normal person would be scared or would, be freaked out, they were not just calm, but they were funny. And they were reassuring us. And that was an out-of-body experience. Just, we weren't even in Gaza for 5 minutes. And we were thinking, are we here to help them or are they helping us? And that's kind of the theme of the whole trip, is that the Palestinians do more for us than we can ever do for them. They are doing so much for our iman, for all of for our character. It's just, I can't even begin to tell you their character is so beautiful, and that was kind of our like welcoming moment, if you will, into Palestine. And then we were taken to our safe house from then, and we spent several nights in the safe house. But as you know, the border closed on the 6th of May while we were there, and the violence and the ground invasion in Rafah started. And no matter what they tell you that it's a limited ground invasion, it's a full ground invasion. And the fighting and the violence got closer and closer and closer. The tanks, the gunfire, the airstrikes got closer to us. And eventually we had to leave our safe house and evacuate to the hospital. And so for the remainder of our trip, we stayed at the European Gaza hospital where we were working. And besides the bombs too, you've probably heard on social media the Palestinians talking about the Zanan, which is the drones. And the best way I can describe it for you is those drones sound like a lawnmower next to your head. So, we live in Dallas and it's hot, and on Saturday morning when you're trying to sleep in and your lawn guy shows up at 7, 8 a.m. and that wakes you up, imagine that sound, but 10 times louder than that. And it's just this type of like psychological warfare, because they've been listening to this lawnmower next to their head sound for 8 months at this point. And it's to the point where you can't hear your own thoughts because the buzzing is so loud. And so after the bomb went off and the drone started back up, the Palestinians told us, if you hear the drone, that means the bombs are far. And if the drones are silent, then the bombs are close. So just immediately going in, we were given like these little tidbits of information, and
Okay.
yeah. So that's kind of our first moments.
Wow, subhanAllah. What was the assignment? I mean, was there a planned assignment when you get there? Or did you all plan it on the way with the other physicians and medical staff that was there with you? What was it like? So they said, okay, we're going to go to this tent, and then how do you decide to choose whoever? Do you just go out in the field and then retrieve someone? How did that work?
Sure. So we were actually stationed at the European Gaza hospital. And so I was with a team of multiple different specialties, physicians, surgeons. There were 2 emergency room physicians with me as well. So the 2 emergency room physicians, and since I'm an emergency room nurse, we were stationed in the emergency room. And we were at only one hospital because of the situation there. Most of the hospitals, as you know, have been either destroyed or they're effectively not functional anymore. And European Gaza is one of those few hospitals that's semi-functional. And I say this as of 2 weeks ago. It's deteriorating by the day because of the situation. But they had most capacities like ER, ICU, kind of some of the general things we think about when we talk about hospitals. And so we were stationed there, and there was no real shift timings, when we were initially in the safe house, we would go in the morning with a convoy essentially, and we would spend the day working, and then we'd come back at night, and some of the surgeons would actually stay at the hospital. But as we evacuated and moved into the hospital, we were working at all hours of the night, and eventually we were trained to where if we heard a bomb go off nearby, and we started to differentiate what was an airstrike, what was a tank shelling, what was gunfire, what was an F-16, what was an F-18. There's all these different types of really advanced weaponry, what's a quadcopter, and once we would hear one go off, we would just come down to the emergency room and we would await the mass casualties that would come in. And I just want people to understand when we're so privileged in our healthcare here, when we think about ambulances here, we think about these things that are equipped with all the medicines, all the oxygen, everything you could need. When you talk about Gaza, especially now, so many of these roads are blocked that ambulances can't even make it from the strike zone to the hospital because the roads are destroyed. And so neighbors and family members will bring patients into the hospital in whatever they can find. And I'm talking donkey carts, I'm talking tractors. We had one gentleman bring us 5 or 6 people from a bomb strike on a tractor because that's all they have. And as you know, fuel is not getting in. So it's just such a dire situation. And that's what I mean when I say that nothing can prepare you, because you can have all the emergency medicine training in the world and you're not prepared for somebody to bring you patients off of a tractor. You're just not. And so every day was a different kind of unexpected thing that we went through. But the one thing that was common was the types of injuries that we saw. I'm not going to go into detail with that because you're well aware and you've seen the injuries online and the crimes that are being committed against humanity. But we also watched a lot of people suffer and die from needless disease. Very simple things that we treat here, people in Gaza are dying from because they don't have the medicine or the basic supplies. And I can break it down in a non-medical way, is that most days we didn't have gloves, we didn't have hand sanitizer, we didn't have soap, we didn't have numbing medication, we didn't have anything beyond Tylenol and ibuprofen to give to people. So the situation is dire, and it's one thing to see it on our phones, but I just want to validate for everybody that everything that you see on your phones is not only true, but it's 100 times worse in person. It really is.
I mentioned in my Coppell today how they, firstly there's the demonization of a people, and then from there's the mobilization of misinformation. It's said that, we're hearing what they may say, the Zionists, we're hearing them say, or they're writing what quote-unquote atrocities is being done from the Palestinians, but with the Palestinians, we're seeing it. Like it's Ra'y al-Ain, like it's Ain al-Yaqeen, and we're seeing it right there of what's going on consistently. I think what we'll do is we'll go through these pictures, and then we'll start with the first one, and then we'll explain it.
Yeah. So, oh no, request access. I don't know why it's doing that. I'm sorry. It's a public file. Yeah, that's fine. It's just So this is just to kind of show you. This is the middle of the emergency room, and if you look at this picture on the right here, you'll see that woman is baking bread on the hospital floor right here. And these were the kind of conditions that we walked into. These are people's homes, essentially. There's these makeshift shelters that people have made, and they were living like this in the hospital because the hospital becomes like one of the only sources of power and really anything. I mean, food, water, all of it is just kind of, so people flock to these hospitals because they think that they'll be safer there, which no place in Gaza is safe, but this is kind of the conditions that we walked into to the ER. As the border closed and people were evacuated from Eastern Rafah to Western Rafah, the refugees actually left to go to, some of them went to go to Western Rafah, some went to Mawasi, which is the beach area that you're seeing a lot of videos of. So this crowd and this situation kind of thinned out towards the end of our stay. You can go to the next slide, please.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I don't know if the community knows. The Rafah is on the border between Palestine and Egypt.
Yes.
Why can't they just cross over to Egypt?
That's a great question. So, where there's war, there's money to be made, unfortunately, and Egypt at the moment is charging people $5,000 to $10,000 US dollars per person to evacuate. You have to have medical documentation that you need to be medically evacuated. And even then, it's not so simple as you give them the $5,000 per person. You have to show that you have enough money to live in Egypt, and essentially they're going from one form of incarceration to another because they still can't move freely in Egypt. They are limited to staying just at the hospital. So the situation is really dire because you're absolutely right. And I don't have it here, but you can see it on my Instagram. I recorded a almost 4-minute video of thousands of aid trucks at the border on both sides of the road. Thousands of aid trucks, fuel, food, water, medication that are not getting in. And those trucks are paying a daily parking fee to be parked there. And when they do get allowed in, they are usually allowed in 1 or 2 at a time because the items inside the truck are about to expire. And this was firsthand information that we were getting from our driver that was driving us through the Sinai Desert and makes this trip twice a week with the UN. So, there is a lot of, unfortunately, people that are profiting off of the suffering of innocence, and that's a great point, an important point, because people do wonder that, is why can't they just leave? Well, they can't. They are effectively stuck and living in these conditions. These pictures are also all around the hospital. You can see people are drying their clothes. They're trying to just make whatever sense of normality they can out of the, oh yeah, you can go back to the, yep. You can go to the next one, please. Yep, this one. So if you look on that picture on the left, that is how the people in Gaza get water. So if you can see, there's one water tank, and there's all these people that have these canisters, and they're mostly little children that are waiting in line to get water. And mind you, this water is not clean water. This water is usually infected with hepatitis A and a number of other pathogens. You may have a liter of water or 2 liters of water. I think those are 5-liter bottles, but you may have that for the entire week. And that's not just for cooking and eating and drinking, it's for bathing and washing your clothes and all of those things. This middle picture is one of the days where people were evacuating from one part of Rafah to the next. As you all know, the people in Rafah have been just shuffled around from east to west and north to south, and this was one of the days where people were, perfect, that's awesome, we're evacuating, and you can see there's 4 or 5 kiddos in the trunk there that they've fit in, and the men on the left there are waiting to purchase fuel. And what they do is they put the fuel in these like liter bottles, like canola oil bottles, if you will, and it's almost $100 for a gallon of fuel. And while we're looking at this, I just want you to keep in mind that these are all man-made scarcities, right? There's no shortage of fuel in the world or in Egypt. There's no shortage of water in the world or in surrounding countries. These are all, unfortunately, man-made scarcities that cause the rise of the cost to go up as well. And then here on the right is a picture of a charging tent that I took, and this is how the people in Gaza charge their phones. So this is near the hospital's generator, actually. So they have solar panels, and they have some generators in the hospital. And what the people do is they have these like power surgers, and they will charge their phones. And this is actually how the local journalists report. You'll see Bisan and Motaz and Plastia, and also the Al Jazeera journalists that will charge their phones that way and then record off their phones. So this is like their only window into the world is these cell phones and social media. And I just want to make a quick note about the phones. Eid is coming up for us, and I think it's really important, a very gentle reminder that just like we can see all the atrocities happening on their end, they can also see what we're doing. They can also see us. And in some ways that's great because they are watching the protests, they are watching your advocacy, they are watching you share the posts, they are also watching the brave students at the universities that are doing commendable work and advocating for the cause. And they told me to tell you directly. I showed them pictures of the UTD encampment and some of the commencement protest that the students did, and this is a direct quote from the Palestinians. They said, "Tell Dallas we love them too, and we hope that it weighs heavy on their scales."
Allahu Akbar. MashaAllah.
So they are watching and they see you, but it's also another gentle reminder to be mindful of what we're posting on social media as far as, with Eid, with food, with things that they don't have access to, because we don't want to be insensitive and hurt them in that way of, we are feasting while they are starving. And, it's just one of those things that I wanted to remind the community of, but they are incredibly proud of all of the advocacy work that especially the students are doing. They talked about that extensively. So know that your effort, Allah is ash-shakur. He sees all of your little effort, but they see it too. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you so much. Okay, so I can't remember what video that was in the middle. That's okay, it's not a problem. So the left picture is actually the picture of the nursing college at the European Gaza hospital where refugees are now staying, and that's how they're living there. And the picture on the right is really beautiful because this is a great example of Palestinian resistance. These are little greenhouses, and as you know, Palestine is a fertile land, and they joke that they can throw a pit of anything and it'll grow. And so they've created these little greenhouses, and some of them get targeted and get bombed, but they continue in their resilience to replant these. And so the only fresh produce that they're getting, the fresh fruit and vegetables, is what they grow in these greenhouses actually. And I just thought it was so beautiful because it's just a form of resistance, it gets bombed and they do it again. They're like, no, we're gonna plant olive trees or eggplant. It's mostly eggplant, tomato, cucumber, and that sort of thing. But this one was right in front of our safe house, and I thought I would show you guys how they're kind of dealing with that situation. You can go on to the next one. Is that it? Oh, it's not letting you give access. I will try.
So while you're doing that, just to. As you can see, the resilience here. Resilience is you falling down or something that you didn't anticipate would happened, and they get right back up and they continue. In the midst of hearing drones and hearing bombs and not knowing where that bomb is going to. What's the statement that I've heard them say? If you hear the bomb, it's a good thing because you know that it's not going to land on you, right? You know that it's not.
Yeah.
What's this the statement they make?
They basically say that if the drones are really loud, that means the bombs are far, and if the drones are silent, then and exactly they say that too. They say if you can hear the bomb, it hasn't hit you, and if it hit you, then Jannah is what they'd usually say. So they say if you don't hear it, don't worry about it because it's. At that point, your questioning is going to be, they were joking one day, they said, you won't have to ask, where is the bomb? Because somebody will be asking you the three most important questions, who is your Lord, who is your prophet? And that this is directly coming from them. And subhanAllah, they have such clarity of what their purpose in life is. And again, it's just something, we learned so many lessons from them, and I could, talk for weeks and it still wouldn't cover their iman and their tawakkul. But I do want to share with you one little story that we had in the emergency room. We had a little bit of anesthetic medicine that we brought with us. It's like a sedative that we give. It's called ketamine. And if you know about ketamine, ketamine's kind of like a truth serum. So you give it to somebody and people usually say like the first thing that's on their subconscious. And as nurses and doctors, we're really used to, people just saying silly things and we kind of just move on and do what we're doing. There was a case of one man came in the middle of the night and he was covered in shrapnel. His home had been bombed and we were having to scrub his wounds and remove whatever shrapnel we could out of him. And when a bomb goes off, not only is there all this concrete and smoke in the air, but there's all this metal that comes off of the bomb that essentially gets lodged into your body. And so we give this man a little bit of ketamine, and when I tell you that this man started making the most emphatic dua and Quran and dhikr that I have ever heard in my life. And again, it's 3 a.m. We've just abruptly woke up. The adrenaline is rushing. And what was this man making dua for, right? What was he reciting? He was making dua for not just himself, Because, you know, when we're in some kind of like personal calamity, I don't know about you guys, but the first person I make dua for is myself. Ya Allah, relieve me from this pain, right? But this man was making dua for you, for us, for all of humanity. He was making dua for all of the Muslimin. He was making dua for, you know, not just Gaza, but all of Palestine, for the world, and this went on for an hour, hour and a half, shahada, kalima, and just whatever verses he knew. And it made us all question, you know, what is our fitrah? If this man's fitrah, his gut reaction, his subconscious was to resort to Allah and to hold on to the rope of Allah, what are we doing when a calamity happens to us? Or what are we saying? What's the first word we say when something happens like that? And it was just, I'll never forget it. It was the most unbelievable scene of where we're scrubbing and stitching and we're saying, Ameen, Allahumma Ameen, Ameen Ya Rab, like for an hour and a half. This man was leading us in dua, and we were like, what shaykh is this? What? And I had the honor of following up with him. He came to the ER a couple days later to check his wounds, and he didn't remember any of it because that's the nature of the medication. And I told him, I said, did you know you were reciting? And he just said, you know, may Allah accept, like it was no big deal. And we were like profoundly moved by this man. And for him, it was like, yeah, of course I was reciting Quran. What else would I recite, you know? And it was just one of those. And you'll hear these stories from everybody. Dr. Farhan Aziz just did an episode with Sheikh Imam Omar Suleiman, and he talks about the same stories that I'm telling you. It's the same type of thing over and over and over again. These are not isolated incidents. These are a testament to the iman and the tawakkul and the sakina that Allah puts in the hearts of the Palestinians, and really any people that are going through a severe test and a severe calamity. They have this like certainty that they are tested by Allah because they are loved by Allah. And they'll tell you that. They'll tell you, yeah, Allah chose us for this. And they take pride in that. And I just think that was such a profound lesson for me and for the doctors treating these patients, and just their steadfastness and just trying to be even 1% of what they are, you know.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. What picture do you have here?
These are us making little hygiene packets with the letters that you guys wrote for the children in Gaza, and we gave them, you know, whatever we could from the donations that we received, and we took as much as we could for the kids, especially because you have to remember these kids are not in school. It's been almost 8 months and they haven't been in school. They don't have any activity. And so these little things are really precious to them. And when we gave them your letters, they held on to these letters for dear life.
SubhanAllah.
SubhanAllah. And they asked us, they said, they care about us, they love us, they make dua for us. And we had to reassure them. We said, of course, you know, the world loves you, and you know, they're children, right? So they can't differentiate the government and their people. And we had to reassure them and tell them, we said, yes, you know, we love you. Dallas loves you. Dallas cares about you. Dallas prays for you. We wish we could take you home and care for you and, you know, give you all the things that we could give you. And so I just want you to know, as a community, that might have seemed in the moment a silly ask from me to say, can you guys write letters for the children of Gaza? But when I tell you, that was one of the most beloved things. It was better than our medications. It was better than our medical supplies. The hope that those letters gave them. So never, my brothers and sisters, underestimate your ability to do an act of kindness for somebody. Even if that's reposting something or a donation that you've given, because you don't know where that's going to end up. And this ended up in the hands of these beautiful, loving children who still send me voice notes every morning, and I tell them every day that I'm a nurse, but they insist on calling me Doctora Abeerah. And every morning they message me and say, good morning, how are you? And that's the extent of their English. That's all they send. But it's every morning, and it's relentless, and it's beautiful. And you know, they're children. They have such love to give. And I just want you to know what a big impact your letters made for them. And subhanAllah, it was so appreciated and so loved, and inshallah, if Allah gives me the honor to go again, this would be the #1 item on my list. Before gloves and hand sanitizers, I would take your letters because it gave them so much hope. And these are some more pictures of the kiddos. We took lots of selfies together, and these are just some of the other letters that VRIC and Louisville Masjid, it was a collective effort. A lot of different masajid wrote letters for them, and that middle picture of me with them is one of my last days there, and they were just so loving and wonderful. And I just want to tell you a little story about the picture on the left of little Amir, who is 5 years old and was a victim of a bomb explosion earlier in the war. And as you can see, he doesn't have, all 4 of his limbs have been amputated. He doesn't have hands or feet. And Amir is the cutest, nicest child, and he still gives you the best hugs, even though he doesn't have arms. And when he came into the ER one day, I don't know, he touched my heart and I fell in love with him. And I found excuses to go to his tent after that day just to see him. And one of the days I went to follow up with him, he was in the tent right next to the ER, so I knew where he was, and I saw him running around in there. And I went and I spoke with his mom and his dad through Google Translate. I'm Pakistani, so my Arabic is horrific. It's one of the things I'm going to work on before I go back. But in our limited conversation, I was asking her about Amir's injury, and she said, La, come in for Shai right now. Come in for tea. Come into the tent for tea. And I said, no, I can't. You only have, in my mind, I'm thinking she only has 1 liter of water for the week. Like, how dare I go use her water? And this woman insisted. And then his dad came and insisted. And he said, no, doctora, you have to come in our tent for tea. Please, you have to. And so I said, okay. So I went in their tent for tea. And that story is just a highlight for you. The fact that even in these apocalyptic conditions, they have the best morals and the best character, and they exemplify truly prophetic character of, I think of like Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam having one date and sharing half of it. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time sharing my food with my husband. I get mad when he eats the leftovers in the fridge. You know what I mean? So it was just one of those things where I was like, wow, it was lesson after lesson after lesson of these people have nothing and they want to give it to me. I don't deserve that. I don't deserve that water that she has for a week. And, I'll never forget Amir and his family, and I make dua for them every day that they're safe. They actually had to leave the hospital last I heard and evacuate to the beach area in Al-Mawasi. And Al-Mawasi is a very difficult place to live because it's like pitching a tent on sand, essentially. There's no water, there's no electricity there, and so, keep little Amir in your duas when you pray for Gaza. But his family was just, and that wasn't just him. It wasn't an isolated incident. It was any tent we walked by. Doctora, come inside. Sabah al khair, how are you? Come in. The small talk, the community, the wanting to offer us bread, and just everywhere we went, little kids offering us little trinkets, little gifts, little notes that said, I love you. Just the amount of love and gratitude that we got. And we weren't even doing anything truly. Like, we were just talking to them and giving them our attention. And, this is one of the, I think I have maybe 500 pictures on my phone of these kids and selfies with them. But just the amount of love I got from them, I would go back for just this. Not even to do anything, yeah. Yes, so their tents all around the hospital, inside the hospital, all on the grounds of the hospital. The European Gaza hospital is actually a very large campus. They, just like hospitals here where you have the main hospital, the emergency room, but you have doctor's offices, you have dialysis centers, you have other areas, and basically all of those buildings are rendered non-functional now, and the families are living everywhere in those areas. So yeah, Amir is one of those families that lived in the hospital, but again, had to evacuate to Al-Mawasi recently.
I think what we'll do now, how many pictures are left over?
I think this was the end of it. Yeah.
I want to make sure that you all get any questions.
Sorry.
If you have any questions while we're going, does anyone have any questions so far? You want to mention?
I just have one last
Sure.
slide to show you. It's that slide of Al-Aqsa.
Yeah,
you can, not this one, but the next one. I don't know if it's going to let you see it, but It'll be the second, yes, this one. Yeah, you can just leave it at this view if it won't. Yeah, that's perfect. So we were supposed to exit through Cairo the way we came in, and we were told once the Rafah border was destroyed that that is no longer functional entrance and exit, and now the only entrance and exit is Karam Shalom, which essentially leads into Israel, and we had to evacuate through Tel Aviv. So initially we were upset. You know, we spent 3 weeks in Gaza and in Palestine, and now we have to go to Israel, and you know, we weren't happy about it. And again, this is another example of Allah being the best of planners. One of the ER doctors, Dr. Hamza, the local ER doctor, he told me, Abeerah, don't think of it as going to Israel. Think of it as Allah giving you the honor to see more of Palestine. And that just changed my perspective. I said, you know what? You're so right. We're seeing more of Palestine. And so, subhanAllah, we were able to somehow convince the US Embassy to not drop us in Tel Aviv, but to drop us in Al-Quds, in Jerusalem. And Allah gave us the honor to go to Masjid al-Aqsa, which, to point out, you know, we're talking about Gaza, but not to forget the rest of Palestine and our brothers and sisters in the West Bank and in Jerusalem who are subject to the same, if not worse, oppression because they're dealing with IDF soldiers every single day. And we witnessed that ourselves, where some of our doctors went up for Fajr and were beaten and denied entry into Masjid al-Aqsa, even though they were, you know, US passport holders. So the intimidation and everything there is very real, and it's very prevalent, and it's every day. So, you know, we can't forget about our brothers and sisters, and specifically our Christian and Jewish brothers and sisters in Jerusalem, because those Palestinians are sometimes not talked about enough, especially in our communities. We had the honor of going to the Christian corridor and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and you know, when we told them that we're coming back from Gaza, there was just such emotion and such tears and such empathy. And the people, the Palestinians in Jerusalem, they say, oh, Gaza, our heart. And when you talk to people in Gaza, they say, no, at least we're being bombed, but at least we're free from the soldiers, you know, most of the time. The people in Jerusalem, they're the ones being oppressed, and they have such empathy for each other. And I just wanted to end with that little note that, you know, we never imagined on this trip that we would go to Masjid al-Aqsa. It was not in the plan. It was not ever, nobody ever considered it. And on the day of Jummah, we were able to go to Masjid al-Aqsa. And that's just again, another testament to we have to trust Allah's plan, because in the greater scheme of things, He knows exactly what He's doing, and it's going to, inshallah, end in the best way. And this is just an example of that. And this picture on the right is the little stamp of Palestine we got. And because we didn't exit through Rafah, we never got an exit stamp. And I just love the symbolism of that, because it's like our hearts never left Palestine. It's like we're still there, because we never got an exit stamp. And I'll never throw this passport out, because it has this page of the state of Palestine. Inshallah, may Allah liberate it, and may we all be able to visit Masjid al-Aqsa in a liberated Palestine. Ya Rab. But yeah, I would be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Please, yes.
So sister, this picture,
Yes.
the gate that's sitting, is that just a random?
It was just a random child. I just thought it was really poignant because, you know, I had just that morning come back from visiting with the children of Gaza, and, you know, here's another Palestinian child on the other side of it. And it's important to also, just for context, tell you that, you know, when they talk about Rafah, they talk about Rafah as a city of children, and Gaza is really a place of children. That couldn't be more true. We rarely treated anybody that was over the age of 40 or 50 in Gaza, because they're not afforded the opportunity to live out their life that long. But in Jerusalem, it's the exact opposite. We met so many older Palestinians, and Al-Aqsa, we really should, as a community, by the way, make a concentrated effort to go to Masjid al-Aqsa if we can, because they love it when we visit. And we were met with, it's like Medina. It's so peaceful and calm, and there are people reading Quran, and they're the people of Quran. They're so dedicated to it, and it was just, Allah knew that it was the sakina that our heart needed, truly. But yeah, no, it was just some random kid. Go ahead, I'll take it from the sister if you don't mind, and I'll come back to you. Yes. So this is the Dome of the Rock, and Masjid al-Qibli is behind it, I believe. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sheikh, but you can pray in both masajid, and we did, yeah.
So, sister, we see that on social media and a lot of organizations are collecting donations for it. Have you seen them, like the bigger one, Islamic Relief or helping?
Sure, absolutely.
Or
So-
any names that you can give us that people are on the ground?
Absolutely. So at the moment, there's no foreign medical teams that are being allowed in, but when medical teams are allowed in, I went with Fajr Scientific, but there's also Med Global, there's PAMA, there's Palestinian American Bridge, there is ICRC, which is the International Red Cross Red Crescent. All of those organizations are on the ground doing good work, and inshallah, once Karam Shalom opens up, they will eventually allow foreign medical teams back in. So that's one way to support. Another organization that I know is on the ground and is doing great work is Human Concern International, I believe, and they have a food kitchen that they're operating. And then UNRWA is another one where, you know, all the conspiracies about it have been debunked, and they are a solid presence in Palestine, and they have been there for decades, and that's one that is reputable and you can donate to. As far as some of the other organizations on the ground, it's hard to say because I was in the hospital specifically. I wasn't in the field as much, and so I didn't personally see, but I know for those few that I've mentioned for sure are on the ground and they're doing great work. And inshallah, if I think of any other ones, I'll definitely share with the community, inshallah. Anyone else? And there's no dumb question, just like Sheikh said. If you have any question about, yeah, go ahead.
So is it only medical staff that are allowed to enter? Can anybody that, you know, has any other professional?
Sure, absolutely. So the question was, is any other specialty allowed besides other medical professionals? So at the moment, they're focusing on doctors, nurses, and physical therapists. I would say that my husband and my parents are both here. They were all very, very supportive. My best friends here, everybody was very supportive of me going. And you know, if I understand that it's a place of privilege. I don't have small children. I had the ability and the flexibility to go. But if you do have a skill set, if you are a medical provider that can go, I would encourage you, please go. At the moment, they're only letting medical teams in, but this is a marathon, not a sprint. Gaza will need help for decades to rebuild. And your skill set, whatever that is, eventually will be needed. So keep an eye out on the organizations that are on the ground doing good work. And the biggest thing, like I told you in the beginning, is make your intention. Make your intention that you want to help for the sake of Allah, to please Allah. And inshallah, I am a testament to that Allah will facilitate it for you. Allah will get you there in one way or another. Just make your intention. So at the moment, it's just doctors and nurses, even physical therapists, they're not really letting in because it's all under the World Health Organization umbrella. But again, this is a marathon, so keep an eye out, and inshallah, you'll get to go soon, inshallah. Anyone? Brothers? Any questions? I can't. Sorry, did you guys have a question on this side? Oh, okay, go ahead. Yes, please.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when your luggage is being packed and the medical supplies are bringing in, is there anything that they take out and you don't allow in? Because I was told that there are a lot of medical supplies that they just, out of meanness, really, they're not allowing
Yeah.
essential medical supplies.
Sure. So this didn't happen with our group. I don't think anything was confiscated from our group, but a previous mission that did go, we were told that expensive medical equipment, including X-fixes and some orthopedic supplies, were confiscated, but they're not confiscated in Rafah. They're confiscated when you land in Cairo. So that's the first hurdle, is landing in Cairo. And now in the future, Cairo likely won't be an option because, again, the Rafah border is destroyed. So now the new entrance will either be you'll land either in Tel Aviv or you'll land in Amman in Jordan and go through that way. So that situation is changing and it's dynamic. We didn't have any medical equipment confiscated personally, but I have heard reports of that as well. And, you know, at that point, those things are kind of out of your control. You take what you take and you go with what you go with, and you hope that it makes it through. We were lucky that all of our stuff made it through. I will say that the one thing about the Egyptian border that was really good was there was no limitation on how many bags you could take. So I took 11 bags, and everyone in our group took 10 to 12 bags. The new reports that are coming out as of yesterday by the WHO is that the Karam Shalom border will only allow 2 bags per person. So that poses a great challenge as to what we can bring in, because as you can imagine, we ran through our medical supplies so quickly. I took, I don't know how many hundreds, I took maybe 1,000 gloves. I ran out of them in a week. And once the border closed, there was no option of getting medical supplies in. So, where there's a will, there's a way. Inshallah, we come up with a way, but it is a dynamic and changing situation at the moment because of what's happening in Rafah right now. And I just want to mention too, while I have you, is that it's important to note that, like the Palestinians appreciate all of the efforts that you guys are doing. It's, again, this is the moment for action, not for apathy. It is really important, more now than ever, whether you've ever been politically involved or not, to call your representatives and demand not just a permanent ceasefire. And there's scripts I can share with you guys. There's WhatsApp groups. People are organized. And there is, and I know we're in Texas, and I know Ted and John don't seem to care, but we do still need to apply pressure because we're taxpayers and we're constituents, and we need to make our voice heard, and we need to demand A, permanent ceasefire, B, that a humanitarian corridor be opened, because the situation at the hospitals and the humanitarian crisis is just getting worse by the day because the border is closed. So please don't discount that action. Those calls have to be logged, and that is really important that we keep doing that, in addition to social advocacy on social media platforms and advocating for the cause.
So, sister, are you able to, if you take money over there, when you are going, are you able to buy any stuff within?
Within Gaza, no. There's nothing, Gaza, to explain it to you in the best way, is that Gaza is all grayscale. It's all rubble. It's all, shops have been destroyed. The little places that food is sold are like these makeshift markets that have popped up. There's no avenue to buy anything in Gaza. So when we were in Cairo, we spent 2 to 3 days in Cairo, and we did some shopping there where we bought, like the kids' toys and stuff that you saw. We bought a lot of that from Cairo with the donations that we were given to our organization. So there is that opportunity. And again, I don't know in the future if there'll be that opportunity to maybe buy it from Jordan, say, and bring it in. But they do limit like how much cash you can take into the country as well. And they do search you and all of that. So there's a lot of severe limitations on what can be taken into Gaza. I mean, one of the most coveted things right now is like cigarettes, coffee, power banks, things that are not available for Gazans. They rely on people coming from outside. So we took like a suitcase full of power banks with us because that's one of the only ways that they can charge their phones. And again, that's their only window into the outside world. So, inshallah, we just have to keep praying that we can take in more supplies, and that's one of the ways that we can help, inshallah, in the future. Yes. While I was there, did I see any soldiers? Not in Gaza, I did not. But when I was in Jerusalem, I saw a lot of soldiers. When we were exiting, actually, we were met with an Israeli tank, and right in front of our bus. And they knew we were trying to leave Gaza, but we were still met with that. And while we were in Jerusalem, we saw a lot of IDF soldiers, and there was a lot of just intimidation, and they try to scare you. But I think what drives them the most crazy is that we only fear one entity, right? And who is that? Allah, exactly. So that faith, really, it's upsetting, and they don't understand it. They're like, who are these people? Because, we're sitting in front of the tank, and we're thinking, Allah's taking care of us. Allah's got a plan. And Allah really puts sakina in your heart when you're there, when you're met with these soldiers and they try to intimidate you. And Allah really gives you that reassurance of, it reminds me of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in the cave, right? What did Allah put in Abu Bakr as-Siddiq's heart? Sakina. When the enemy surrounded them, Allah said, La tahzan. Don't grieve, don't be scared. And that's how we felt while we were there. We were met by these soldiers. But it's there. The intimidation is there. But you just, you trust in Allah's plan, inshallah. And Allah got us through. I think somebody else in the sisters had a question. Yeah, go ahead. May Allah accept. Definitely, yeah. Absolutely, that's a great question. So yeah, there were many moments where the bombing was very, very close. There were times where our safe house in the hospital, the walls would shake, and when walls shake, you see the cement dust kind of come down, and we could smell the cement and the chemicals in the air, and it just became instinctive to just say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Like that was constant. It was constantly on our tongue. And my husband even told me the other night when we had the storms and the thunder was going off, and he said, you woke up and you said ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Like it's just instinct. And we learned it from the Palestinians. This is not to any credit to myself or any of us for being brave. It was literally, we learned it from the Palestinians. We would watch their reactions, and they weren't scared, and they would be saying shahada. They would say, they would say these du'as, and that's what we would lean on. That was the only source of comfort, was Allah and Salah and Quran. And it didn't matter if we were in the middle of the operating room. If it was time for Asad, everything would stop, and we would first pray, and the Palestinians would lead us in prayer, and they would lead us. And you've heard this online about how the Palestinians they're all hufad, and they all have committed the Quran to memory. And you can destroy their land, you can destroy the mushaf, but you cannot destroy the iman that they have in their heart. And it's a very common question in Gaza to ask, how many ajza do you know? And we're embarrassed. We're like, I know maybe 10, 12 surahs, and I'm speaking for myself. But they ask you, how many ajza do you know? And it's just one of those things where that's like a common, natural thing for them. And subhanAllah, really, we derive strength from them. There were many nights where we were scared. I would say every night we were scared for our lives, that we would lose our lives. But we just had this certainty of, Allah invited us here for a reason. And if we're meant to die in this land, nobody can stop it, right? Nobody can stop death here. We can walk out the door of our home and be killed. And you have to know that in your heart when you go to do something like that your death is written, and your qadr is written, and it's written in the best of ways. And it can happen here, it can happen there. And that was the thought process of all of us, not just me, but every foreign medical person that was there. And it was almost an honor to die in that land, right? And to be counted among, inshallah, those shuhada. But that was just some of the thought process, was leaning into our iman, and they taught us that. Very good question. Kiddos, any questions? Yes, go ahead.
After what you have witnessed in Gaza, what is your opinion? Do you think the Muslim world is still alive, or they are in ICU?
The Muslim world at large. No, I want to have a hopeful approach. I think I want to have optimism in the fact that the tide is changing. I'm 33, I'll speak for myself. I went to UTD, my husband went to UTD 10 years ago, and when we would go to these protests for SJP or any of these organizations, 5 or 6 of us would show up. We were all Muslim for the cause, and now we're seeing the numbers, we're seeing people's narratives changing, we're seeing Western media even talk about this in terms of a genocide, and I think we need to derive hope from that, and we need to keep that momentum going, because I think that the cause is different now. Many of us have been advocating for Palestine for decades. This is not October 7th onwards. This is a 75-year-long struggle. And I think that the narrative is changing, inshallah, with Allah's help, I think. And the reason I'm speaking to you today, I don't like this type of thing. I'm not a social media person. You can ask any of my friends. I've been off Instagram for about 5 years now. And I only got back on it for this cause because I felt it a responsibility that I bore witness. And now it's my responsibility to talk about it. And I think whatever you can do in your own capacity, whether that's educating, whether that's political, whether that's medical, whatever it is, it's our responsibility as Muslims to do that. And part of the reason I went was because I didn't know how I would stand in front of Allah on the Day of Judgment, and what excuse would I have? I was given this opportunity. How would I tell Allah that, I had the opportunity and I didn't go? I couldn't live with that. And so I think that the Muslim, to answer your question, I think Muslims, our iman is being awakened by the Palestinians. I truly believe that. I see it. I see people talk about it. Seeing these videos, I think it has a deep effect on people. Like, what is that person leaning into that I don't have? What are they using to cope with this immense amount of pain that they're going through? And it's iman, it's tawakkul, it's Quran, it's sunnah. And I think that's a lesson for all of us. So, and I think it's important to distinguish governments and their people. Because while we were in Egypt, yes, the government is doing a lot of things that are complicit in this genocide. There is no doubt. But the people of Egypt, their hearts are with the people of Gaza. And it's like that with any other country. You see the protests in Jordan and Turkey and all of the Muslim world. So I think that the hearts of the people are with the Palestinians, and I think that if we can derive the lessons from them appropriately, I definitely think there's hope for the Muslim Ummah, and the tides are changing, inshallah. I would like to have that optimistic approach.
Alhamdulillah. I think the time has come to a conclusion. I really just want to firstly thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this moment, and I've been honored to be here and to sit next to you and to hear the news. And this all started, mashallah, by her taking the initiative to send a message, to ask for letters from the ICC community. And those of you that were able to send letters or anything to give to her, mashallah, may Allah reward you, the parents that, parents and children, alhamdulillah bil alameen. But it all started from a text. It all started from her texting, and then it came to this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thank the board. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thank Sister Maria, mashallah, for being diligent, always moving her and her husband, inshallah. May Allah bless them. And lastly, may Allah bless all of you for coming. I mean, this is really, really important. This is what makes a community, and this is how we obtain knowledge of each other, about each other, inshallah. So jazakallah khair. And if you have any other questions, inshallah, you can see her, inshallah. I mean, after Salat al-Maghrib, we're going to, if she's here, mashallah, she'll be able to answer the questions. And if not, there's a way you can reach to her, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and have any other questions regarding this subject matter and anything other than that.
Thank you so much for having me. Jazakallah khairan for your love and your du'as and your donations and your support. It was truly a group effort. I went physically, but I represented all of you. So thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor. I appreciate all of you.
Jazakallah khair. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.